Chapter 5. Charlotte. The night seemed long. Wilbur's stomach was empty and his mind was full. And when your stomach is empty and your mind is full, it's always hard to sleep. A dozen times during the night, Wilbur woke and stared into the blackness, listening to the sounds and trying to figure out what everything was. A barn is never perfectly quiet. Even at midnight, there's usually something stirring. The first time he woke, he heard Templeton gnawing a hole in the grain bin. Templeton's teeth scraped loudly against the wood and made quite a racket. That crazy rat, thought Wilbur. Why does he have to stay up all night long, grinding his clashers and destroying people's property? Why can't he go to sleep like any decent animal? The second time Wilbur woke, he heard the goose turning in her nest and chuckling to herself. "What time is it?" whispered Wilbur to the goose. "Probably, obbly, 11:30, said the goose. "Why aren't you asleep, Wilbur?" "Too many things on my mind," said Wilbur. "Well," said the goose, "that's not my trouble. I have nothing at all on my mind, but I have too many things under my behind. Have you ever tried to sleep sitting on eggs?" "No," said Wilbur. "I suppose it is uncomfortable. How long does it take for a goose egg to hatch?" Approximately 30 days, I'm told," said the goose. "But I cheat a little. On warm afternoons, I just pull a little straw over the eggs and I go for a walk." Wilbur yawned and went back to sleep. In his dreams, he again heard a voice saying, "I'll be a friend to you. Go to sleep. You'll see me in the morning." About half an hour before dawn, Wilbur woke and listened. The barn was still dark. The sheep lay motionless. The geese were quiet. Overhead on the main floor, nothing stirred. The cows were resting. The horses dozed. Templeton had quit work and gone off somewhere on an errand. The only sound was a slight scraping on the rooftop where the weather vane swung back and forth. Wilbur loved the barn when it was like this, calm and quiet, waiting for light. Day is almost here, he thought. Through a small window, a faint gleam appeared. One by one the stars went out. Wilbur could see a goose a few feet away. She sat with her head tucked under her wing. Then he could see the sheep and the lambs. The sky lightened. "Oh, beautiful day! It's here at last. Today I will find my friend." Wilbur looked everywhere. He searched his pen thoroughly. He examined under a window ledge, stared at the ceiling, but he saw nothing there. Finally, he decided he would have to speak up. He hated to break the lovely stillness of dawn by using his voice, but he still couldn't think of any other way to locate the mysterious new friend. So Wilbur cleared his throat. "Attention, please," he said. "Will the party who addressed me at bedtime last night kindly make himself or herself known by giving an appropriate sign or signal?" Wilbur paused and listened. All the other animals lifted their heads and stared at him. Wilbur blushed, but he was determined to get in contact with his friend. "Attention, please," he said. "I will repeat the message. Will the party who addressed me at bedtime last night please speak up? Tell me where you are, my friend." The sheep looked at each other in disgust. "Stop your nonsense, Wilbur," said the older sheep. "If you have a new friend here, you're probably just disturbing its rest, and the quickest way to spoil friendship is waking somebody in the morning before they're ready. How can you be sure your friend is an early riser?" "I beg everyone's pardon," whispered Wilbur. "I didn't mean to be so objectionable." He lay down meekly in the manure facing the door. He did not know, but his friend was very near. And the old sheep was right. The friend was still asleep. Soon Lurvy appeared with slops for breakfast. Wilbur rushed out, ate everything, licked the trough. The sheep moved off into the lane. The gander waddled behind them, pulling grass. And just then, as Wilbur was settling down for a morning nap, he heard the voice that addressed him the night before. "Salutations," said the voice. Wilbur jumped to his feet. "What?" he said. "Salutations," said the voice. "What are they?" "What are you?" screamed Wilbur. Please tell me what you are, and what's salutations?" "Salutations are greetings. And when I say salutations, it's just a fancy way of saying hello or good morning. Actually, it's a silly expression, and I'm surprised that I used it at all. As for my whereabouts, well, that's easy. Look up in the corner of the doorway. Here I am. I'm waving." At last Wilbur saw the creature he had been talking to. Stretched across the upper part of the doorway was a big spider web, and hanging from the top head down was a large gray spider. She was the size of a gumdrop. She had 8 legs, and she was waving one of them in a friendly greeting. "See me now?" "Oh, yes, indeed," said Wilbur. "Yes, indeed. How are you? Good morning. Salutations. Very pleased to meet you. What's your name, please? May I have your name?" "My name," said the spider, "is Charlotte." "Charlotte what?" asked Wilbur. "Charlotte A. Cravatica, but just call me Charlotte." "I think you're beautiful." "Well, I am pretty," replied Charlotte. "There's no denying that. Almost all spiders are very nice looking, but I'm not as flashy as some. but I'll do, and I wish I could see you, Wilbur, as clearly as you can see me. Well, why can't you? Said the pig. I'm right here. Yes, well, I'm nearsighted, said Charlotte. I've always been dreadfully nearsighted. It's good in some ways and not so good in others. Watch me wrap up this fly. A fly that had been crawling along in Wilbur's trough had flown up and blundered into the part of her web, and it was tangled in sticky threads. The fly was beating its wings furiously, trying to break loose and free itself. First, said Charlotte, I dive at him. And then she plunged head first toward the fly, and as she dropped, a tiny silken thread unwound from her rear end. Next, I wrap him up. She grabbed the fly, threw over the jets of silk, and flew over and over and over, wrapping him so he could not move. Wilbur watched in horror. He could hardly believe what he was seeing, and although he detested flies, he was very sorry for this one. There, said Charlotte. Now I knock him out so he'll be more comfortable. She bit the fly. He can't feel a thing now. He'll make perfect breakfast for me. You mean you eat flies? Certainly, flies, bugs, grasshoppers, choice beetles, moths, butterflies, tasty cockroaches, gnats, midges, daddy-long-legs, centipedes, mosquitoes, crickets, anything that's careless enough to get caught in my web. I do have to live, don't I? Well, yes, of course, said Wilbur. Do they taste good? Delicious. Of course, I really don't eat them. I drink them, drink their blood. I love their blood, said Charlotte. And her pleasant, thin voice grew thinner and more pleasant. Don't say that, groaned Wilbur. Please don't say that. Why not? It's true. And I have to say what's true. I'm not entirely happy about my diet of flies and bugs, but it's the way I'm made. A spider has to pick up living somehow or another. And I just happen to be a trapper. I just naturally build a web and trap flies and other insects. My mother was a trapper before me. Her mother was a trapper before her. All our family has been trappers. Way back thousands and thousands of years, we spiders have been laying and waiting for flies and bugs. It's a miserable inheritance, said Wilbur gloomily. He was sad now because his friend was bloodthirsty. Yes, it is, said Charlotte, but I can't help it. I don't know how the first spider in the early days actually would think of this fancy idea of spinning a web, but she did, and it was very clever too, and since then all spiders have had to work the same trick. It's not a bad pitch on the whole. It's cruel, replied Wilbur, who did not intend to be argued out of his position. Well, you can't talk, said Charlotte. You have your meals brought to you in a pail. Nobody feeds me. I have to get my own living. I live by my wits. I have to be sharp and clever lest I go hungry. I have to think and catch what I can and what comes next. And it just so happens, my friend, that what comes in is flies and insects and bugs. And furthermore, said Charlotte, shaking one of her legs, do you realize that if I didn't catch bugs and eat bugs, bugs would increase and multiply and get so numerous that they'd destroy the earth and wipe out everything? Really? Said Wilbur. I wouldn't want that to happen. Perhaps your web is a good thing after all. The goose had been listening to the conversation and chuckling to herself. There are a lot of things Wilbur doesn't know about life, she thought. He's really a very innocent little pig. He doesn't even know what's going to happen to him around Christmas time. He has no idea that Mr. Zuckerman and Lurvey are plotting to kill him. And the goose raised herself a bit and poked her egg further, so they would receive the heat from her warm body and soft feathers. Charlotte stood quietly over the fly, preparing to eat it. Wilbur laid down and closed his eyes. He was tired from his wakeful night and from the excitement of meeting someone new for the first time. A breeze brought him the smell of clover, sweet-smelling world beyond the fence. Well, he thought, I've got a new friend all right, but what a gamble friendship is. Charlotte is fierce, brutal, scheming, bloodthirsty, everything I don't like. How can I learn to like her even though she's pretty and of course she's clever? Wilbur was merely suffering the doubts and fears that go with finding a new friend. In good time, he was to discover that he was mistaken about Charlotte. Underneath her bold and cruel exterior, she had a very kind heart, and she was to prove loyal and true to the very end.